Christians are rising up. I'm telling you guys.
This guy is probably responsible for hundreds of deaths.
You know how valuable your life is?
Jesus, we have to heal this country.
Wow, so amazing. I just thought it was such a great documentary. You guys did a really great job. One of the things that I, thought was really great is that you had both kind of positions in there, right? Where, a lot of times they make documentaries nowadays where it's just kind of like one-sided, right? And they're trying to make their viewpoint. But I think it was good to have that kind of addition of both sides. Now, was that something you guys talked about before you decided to put that in, or what was the decision there?
I mean, I think it's important to tell the whole story, I mean, that's actually one of my favorite things I love about even the Bible, for example, is it's got the whole story in there. And I think that, this last season has not been a Christian highlight film. And so I think if we did that with the documentary, it would not be true to the story. And so I think it was just really important for it to come across authentically. It's one of the reasons it has a PG-13 rating is because it was wild.
Now, what was the point that you were like, we need to take action on this? Because, we all were kind of in this state at the very beginning of March 2020 where we're like, what's going on? Like, what, this is so different than anything. And, the fear that the media kind of put on us, and we were all kind of in fear. But what was the point that you're like, no, this isn't right. Like, we need to do something about it?
I think what really was alarming for me was the hypocrisy. I think when you saw, for example, casinos being open, strip clubs being open, marijuana dispensaries being open, but the church is the problem. You saw BLM riots, you saw thousands in the streets protesting, and COVID wouldn't touch those guys. But when the church comes together to worship, that's a super spreader event. That to me was kind of like, okay, this does not make any sense. And any logical person had to think the same.
I mean, it's crazy because the church should always be the place that is the refuge place, like the place that people can come to in these tough times, and that people can rely on to be open and to be there for them. And so it's just crazy that we kind of we're in California too, and so it was like everybody just kind of complied right away. We're just like, what about the foundation of the church where we're supposed to be there for the people? Looking back on it, this is a reminder of why did we put up with it is the question.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that we can have this story releasing now where we're kind of past it. We've seen how unscientific things are. We've seen how crazy the government was. There's a large consensus that we didn't handle that season well. And now we can look back and say, okay, well, in the midst of this, God was still moving. In the midst of this, we learned some things because, I keep telling people this was just a test, it's going to happen again. But this gives us an opportunity to kind of take inventory and to see, okay, how do we respond? And people are able to watch through this film and kind of remember how crazy it was. But yet in the midst of that, there was a bold church that really did rise up. And it's undeniable the power of God that moved on cities all over America.
I think it's a great documentary in that facet because it's it reminds us, because the news is always focusing on, the hardships and the fear and the this and the that. They didn't show as much, your videos were more viral videos, right? On Instagram and social media. It's because the news doesn't want to ever focus on the good stuff happening. and so it's a good thing that, the church is growing and the revival is happening. And, where can we go from this in terms of, things are kind of getting back to, normal and people are, the church is getting back to its place. But where can the church kind of take off from here?
I think that we've seen historically that seasons of crisis and calamity and hardship and darkness really, it says in Hebrews, when everything that can be shaken is shaken, it reveals in us a kingdom that can't be shaken. And so I think, we have to remember who we are. We have to remember the authority that we carry. And we have to remember that the darker it gets, the more the light needs to shine. And so, that's my prayer, is that, and I really been saying across America that the post-COVID church looks different than the pre-COVID church. The post-COVID church is a little more wild. It's a little more like rowdy, it's a little more unwilling to, submit to tyrannical psycho government orders. And so my prayer is that this would provoke something in people, right? That they can watch this and they would catch something of what God did in that season, and it would remain with them.
And I think that was something that you did, because you stood up, and people need someone to stand up during those times. Like, whatever you think about Trump, it's like he did tell people that they could have a voice, and like you can stand up to things and not just be like, just take whatever people are telling you. But you must have had a word of wisdom from God to go through this and to be brave about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, it was steps at a time. I think had we had known what we were getting ourselves into, and the pushback and the death threats and the hardship and the intensity, we probably wouldn't have done it. But God guided us along the way and was just reminding us, with every city that we went to, that he's still on the throne, he's still in control, and he's still moving. And, with each encounter that we had, our faith grew, our boldness grew, our courage grew. And, till, here we are 160, 170 cities into this journey, and we just feel like God's unstoppable, and we have the track record and the history of his faithfulness since 2020.
So what's happening with Let Us Worship now going forward?
I mean, I think we're doing what we've always done. We're pressing into cities. We were just in Detroit this last week, 2 days ago, and 5,000 people showed up, and
wow,
God moved. And, it was probably the largest gathering in Michigan of the church in probably a year. The week before that, we were in Johannesburg, South Africa. We had 8,000 people that showed up in Johannesburg, which was the largest church meeting in 3 years in the country. And so, it just seems like momentum continues to grow, and we're carrying that kind of, I don't know, I guess you could call it like a pandemic fire, even though we're not in the pandemic anymore. We're just carrying that desperation for God.
Yeah. What kind of hope can you give the audience, like our audience, on this revival? What kind of more can you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like, the Lord spoke to me, the end of last year. I just was like, maybe we completed our assignment in this season and birthed this movement. But I just kept hearing God say, this has only just begun. You've only just begun to see what I'm about to do. And so, no eyes seen, nor ears heard, nor heart has conceived what he has in store. And so we're just continuing to follow that thread, and God continues to open up incredible doors. I'm here in Washington, D.C. today, and we're going to worship tomorrow in the Capitol building. And doors continue to open, and we continue to walk through them. And so I'm just excited. I'm excited to see where this leads and what God continues to do. And we're just along for the journey.
In terms of, you were going for politics, and then you came up with this. I'm not came up with it, but God led you to this. How do you see the difference between like the politics and Jesus saving people and changing people and the real movement happening? Which I kind of fed you an answer, but.
Well, I feel like the political thing. I think that it's part of the Great Commission, to take the gospel into every sphere of society. And I think that, for too long, Christians and the church has viewed the political mountain as dirty, and, you can't really do that as a Christian, but yet we have the commission from Jesus to bring the light everywhere. And And especially in this realm, it's a dark realm, you know, it needs a lot of light. And so, you know, to me, I don't see it. I don't see any differentiation between what we're called to do in bringing the gospel to the Middle East or in Africa, like we were last week, and to Capitol Hill here in DC. I think that we have to start viewing it as a mission field, just like we do anything else.
I agree. Totally. And that's what we're doing in Hollywood. We view it as a mission field at Movieguide, and we've been working here for, you know, my father started it about 30 years ago to do that, to reach the people here making the decisions. And so wonderful. I'm so excited about this film coming out. Do you guys have a distribution plan, or what's the plan? Because I know it comes out late September, right?
Yeah. Comes out late September. It's going to come to at least 500 theaters across America. So we're excited about that. I think one of the biggest things that gets me really excited is that we really want to bring this experience, this revival experience of Let Us Worship, into the theater. So we're going to have like pastors book out theaters, invite people. It's going to be very evangelistic, you know. The goal is to see people get saved, see people get touched, see people get healed, all the things we've been seeing across America, but just why not in the theater? So anyway, I'm super excited about that. And, you know, there's a lot of pastors and leaders out there that want an evangelism strategy. And I think this is a great one. It's controversial. So people are going to watch it that aren't Christians just because they want to see what the heck this thing is about. It tells the whole story. It's very raw, and there's nothing about it that's really cheesy. You know, I think that sometimes in the Christian music, in the Christian film space, people will say that, and I say, well, this one's pretty raw, you know? And so I think that there's a lot people can relate to in it. And I'm really believing it's going to be a great evangelism strategy for people all over the world.
There's a pandemic, there's a plague, here's a move of God that's going to change America.